All right, all right, all right. Good morning, everyone. Really grateful to be with you here today. See what I did there? Haha. This is Chris Hewer, and today I'm joined by Michael Moon, and we are going to today do something I think that's really important. And in fact, Michael's been doing this for some time and talking about and actually working on a book around the idea of gratitude protocols and how you can bring gratitude in your life in a little more systemic, intentional way as a force multiplier in really all you do. And as I was looking at this and particularly thinking about addressing this topic now here around Thanksgiving, of course, where we are all focused on the idea of being grateful for our friends, our family, our lives, the bounties hopefully on our table. Unfortunately, not for everyone. So part of sharing this knowledge is hopefully to share the ability for more people to find the success to have that sort of bounty on the table. But let me do this here. So again, this is Chris Hewer, and I'm joined again by Michael Moon. And we are Waymakers, and this show is Waymakers Live. For the last several weeks, we've been exploring the What Will It Take protocol to expand our mind and possibilities to create a more fertile ground for organizational transformations, for personal transformations, for world-changing transformations as it is. And, given this time of year, it's a great chance to actually connect the dots to these gratitude protocols and the energy of gratitude and what it can do to actually create a high performing organization and high performing teams. I've got a little more to say about that, but before I get into that, Michael, welcome. And
Yes.
I'd love to just, if you could, please give me a 2 minute or so monologue on your perspective on gratitude so that we can get this grounded, and then we'll take it from there and dive into some more questions and get into a little bit more of the things that people can actually do to instill gratitude into their organizational design and their culture.
Well, thank you, Chris, and welcome out there, Heather. Oh gosh, Stephanie's back. Welcome, and our ever-present Jimmy. So thank you for dialing in. Um, First, I want to introduce gratitude in the context of this series. This series, we've been mining or delving into what would it take to achieve extraordinary results. And this has evolved into what would it take to perform to potential? Perform to potential at the level of an organization, perform to the potential of a department or group, a team or individual. But and so undergirding everything here is what would it take to perform to your what would it take to perform to potential. Now that said, we want to really focus on gratitude, and more importantly, I want to bring forward some of the most recent um, cognitive research on gratitude. Now, most people think mistakenly that gratitude is about the past. It's about being grateful for having received. And while there are certainly, that's an aspect of gratitude, from a neuroscience perspective, it is just the opposite. Gratitude is about future. It's grounded in prospection, and it's grounded in future experience of reciprocity. So what does that mean? Fundamentally, most of us know the right thing to do, and we don't do it if the daily whirlwind gets too intense. We discount the future. We discount our future self. We discount doing the right thing out of the expediency of the red hot moment. Gratitude is a bulwark against discounting the future. So the more that we have the experience of gratitude, the more that we do the right thing reflexively, the more that we have the experience of gratitude, the more that we are constantly paying it forward. And so therefore, gratitude is really an aspect of a culture plan, productivity with well-being. And that's critical. Optimizing productivity with well-being. Great. Now, the next piece I want to lay in is...
Hold on. Let's stop on this, Michael, and come back and we'll get to the next piece here in a second. Because one of the things about gratitude, and this might go a little bit against what you just said, but I think it's really important, is it's about the presence aspect of it as well, right? It's about actually being present and bringing that energy into your life and how that neurologically stimulates different types of thinking and different types of action, which is part of that wellness. Is it right?
Yep. So,
because Chris, one of the things for me is that
the paradox I want to make sure that we don't fall into is everything, nothing, everything is in the moment. There is nothing that's not in the moment. So if there's nothing that is not ever in the moment, if everything is the moment, then it's about how we are, how we stand in the moment, how we show up in the moment. And many of us show up in the moment heavily freighted with what happened,
Yep.
and we're saying, hey, that's
burdened by the past.
However, performing to your potential is about standing in the moment with a different relationship, an augmented, deeper, more meaningful relationship with your future.
Well, and the reason why I want to point this out, and of course you're correct in this, though, is that I'm looking at the majority of society and unfortunately the majority of organizations where, that's not always the case, where people are stuck in the past or worried about the future, as opposed to what you do
again, the case
in your future-proofing work.
Gratitude, first and foremost, is about performing. Gratitude in the workplace is about performing to potential. This emphasizes the experience of the now that is heavily influenced by the future. So instead of doing something because this is how I've always done it, or I feel compelled to do this, well, why do you feel compelled to do it? Almost always there's loss aversion. Almost always there's avoiding some pain. And it is out of that bias, that loss aversion, out of avoidance of pain, we do stupid things that discount our future.
Well, they don't only discount it, they prevent it from being as great as it could be.
So given that we're talking about managing the moment now, the research, the neuroscience shows that gratitude as a mood, as a state, is a bulwark against the expediency of the red hot moment. Gratitude,
and that's where actually
is about not discounting. It is the muscle, the basis for not discounting futures.
And one of the things I hope that we're able to, create, or at least to instill in several people's minds, is that it's not a once a year sort of activity. It's an ongoing part of being present. And in understanding it, it's not just, when I was growing up and I did all the coaching and leadership stuff when I was a teenager and what have you, it was always this PMA talk, right? Positive mental attitude. Positive mental attitude can do anything. And, there's an element of this that gets into The Secret and a bunch of stuff like that. But it's much more than that. And I actually discounted that sort of stuff as well, you can't just fake it till you make it so that you're happy sort of stuff. And over the years, literally for a decade, I completely discounted that to the point that I didn't even try to move into that mindset. And, it just ended up really, really harming me for a long time. But understanding the power of mantras and rituals and some of the other stuff that we'll get to in a little bit. We're not going to get into that now. We're going to talk more about the systemic impacts. Okay. Has really altered my life and my business
outcome. In here, Chris, is that while it's about offsetting temporal discounting, I'm suggesting that gratitude as a corporate value in action is actually the seventh pillar in employee wellness.
Hmm.
So, employee wellness.
Wait, well,
Employee wellness are things like
where are the first six coming from, Michael? Set that up, because why is it the
right.
seventh and not the first?
So first of all, employee wellness. So, and again, there are all these kind of wellness metaphors out there, but essentially, nutrition, mindfulness, physical activity, having your financial house in order, doing social things. And again, each of these wellness programs have different metaphors, but the thing that holds all of those pillars together, you could even say maybe this is the keystone for corporate wellness, is the experience of gratitude that gives rise to co-ownership of the company.
Well, now you're
Okay?
getting deep quick. I
I'm
was going to
sorry.
set that up some more, but that's all right.
Well, all right. So ultimately, what we're working for here is co-ownership, as well as well-being, and a condition that we can measure in our cultural assessments as aligned readiness. Okay. So to state, today's session, we want to really look at and unpeel and bring forward gratitude as a fundamental value and action of culture plans. It is about addressing, optimizing the productivity and well-being of employees. Good so far?
Yes, absolutely. That's the simple bit. We got to go
Okay,
unpack
now
a bunch of buzzwords still, but yeah.
that's the setup. The thing we want to talk today about is okay. That's all the nice theory, the big picture. Put some meat on those bones. What are some concrete examples of that? So,
Well, wait,
so the
before
rest.
we get into the example, it's 15 after. I just want to go ahead, please. And today, one of the reasons why I'm not on camera, and it turns out we do want to share some of the things and continue with our whiteboard stuff, is that I wanted to hopefully have this more of a conversation with the people who are showing up. So, if you have any questions about this at a conceptual level or about the systems or a point to add, we'd really appreciate it if you went ahead and raise your hand and requested to speak. And we have Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, come on up and share a thought and ask Michael a question, because this is really a deep and important topic, and I think it's one that we all have to talk about from multiple perspectives.
I agree. Michael and Chris, great to see you again. Always, always love your shows on Fireside. So,
Thank you.
this is so interesting to me that I am on a Zoom call right now and I'm muted and my video is off because I am fascinated with this concept and I appreciate you taking a pause. Michael, would you go back? I'm tracking with you to a point when we're talking about this notion of gratitude that leads into this sort of psychological state of being in terms of co-ownership from an employee perspective over that company. Will you break that down a little bit more micro for me on how that sense of gratitude looking into the future, so being present but then futuristic, and how does that create that state of sort of the psychology of co-ownership, would of course would impact your sense of belonging in a company and your productivity, et cetera. I got lost a little bit, but I'm a
Sure. Well, I do have my whiteboard here where I've kind of done the logic chain of that. So first of all, we're talking about gratitude not as something that you add to, but something that's intrinsic to the organization. That's like radical candor, or telling the truth, or doing the right thing. These are core should be one of the core values in action of an organization. This oftentimes reflects a culture plan, which is how do we really bring our mission, vision, and values to everyone within the organization, such that they do the right thing, such that they show up aligned and ready to deal with whatever. So they show up already in a condition of wellness or well-being.
And if I may insert one point, not every organization has a culture plan, but that means they have a culture plan because they haven't addressed it, and it's not important.
Exactly. Right.
Right. So what we're doing here, so just to restate, we're saying that gratitude, gratitude, we want to address gratitude as a core value of an organization, as opposed to something that's simply added to. I wanted to bring forward the notion that gratitude, this perspective on gratitude, is grounded in neuroscience and peer-reviewed scientific papers that demonstrate that gratitude is about not what happened in the past, but it's really about a condition of not discounting your future. So the whole marshmallow, the whole little marshmallow test of delayed gratification. That whole thing is premised on willpower, on rational executive function willpower. And the problem with willpower is the more you use it, the less you have. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the more you use it, the more you have of it. And the more you have of it, the less willpower that you have to use. You reflexively do what is the right thing to do, not only now, but in terms of futures.
Perfect. Thank you. That perfectly wrapped.
Well,
you have willpower and you have flow power. So gratitude is one of the engines of flow power, an inexhaustible, self-renewing source of being able to show up, get it done, and feel great about it. Okay.
Yeah, and if I may, one other point to answer that question to get to the co-ownership. The idea here is that, when you've got a smile on your face, when you're actually focusing your mind on things that you're grateful for, and when that becomes a consistent part of your employee experience, that well-being increase as one of the 7 pillars of wellness is what creates a more excited, engaged, present state of mind and more joy. And through that joy is a greater sense of belonging. And that greater sense of belonging leads to a sense of co-ownership because people feel like they're a part of it. They have an influence on it. And they're actually, as you know, from some of the engagement studies that show how many people are disengaged from work, when people are appreciated, that they are more engaged with their work. So it just hits on it in so many different ways. It's really fundamental.
Right. Thank you for that clarification.
One last thing.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
One last thing, Stephanie, that I think was really great that you brought forward here is I've got willpower, which I've said is a function of executive function willpower. And then I got flow power, which is a function of love and gratitude. Abiding love and gratitude. When you can combine the two, you have a superpower. And this is what makes Tiger Woods Tiger Woods. This is what makes Steph Curry Steph Curry. Is they have a mindset, they have a way of showing up on the game board of life that is unusual, exceptional, that allows them to perform to potential. And I submit that the gratitude is one of the principal engines for not only your accessing flow power or the power of a flow state when it's combined with an objective. Here's what I want to accomplish as a function of willpower. Then the stars align, mountains move, oceans part.
Yeah, it's very true. That's fantastic.
In it, there is an experience of dignity. There's an experience of freedom. There's an experience of power. There's an experience of abundance. Like I have all that I need. In fact, I've got more than enough to share.
That's fantastic. All right, we have a lot more to cover, so I'm going to get moving on. Stephanie, thank you so very much. If you have another question later on, please raise your hand again, and we're happy to have you back up. Likewise, for anyone else, this is Chris Ewer and Michael Moon for Waymakers Live. Today we're talking about gratitude and its role in organizations as well as our lives, and focusing more on organizations, particularly organizations who are trying to intentionally build a better workplace, which, in light of the great resignation today, we hope is an increasing number of organizational leaders looking at the importance of looking after their employees, their ecosystem of partners, as well as their customers. And so, Michael, coming back to this a little bit, we talked about the culture plan. So, what elements of a culture plan might focus on gratitude, or where do we put that change effort into place to start implementing gratitude protocols in our workplace?
Perfect. So, one of the things that we brought forward in the last two or so of our What Would It Take fireside chats is that brand and culture, brand being kind of the net summary of a customer's experience of the product and company, and culture being the how, why, and the what, how, and why we do what we do. We're saying that they're deeply correlated. So 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 whereas we have a marketing plan and perhaps a brand or customer experience plan, there is an equivalent plan for managing culture. Great. So now most of that gets shunted over into HR as a bunch of box checking, and the boxes need to be checked, but that's kind of a default reactive culture plan. So now the other aspect of that is how then do we begin to think about it? And one of the things that I introduced in my book, Firebrands: Building Brand Loyalty in the Internet Age, is that brand is a mechanism of culture, like cuisine, fashion, architecture. It's a mechanism of culture. Great. So, what are the mechanisms of culture, of corporate culture? And so, one of the mechanisms. So, here I'm going to talk about three mechanisms of corporate or organizational culture. One is projects, how we do projects, and specifically decision making. How we do one-on-one meetings, and how we do let's call them team meetings. So, how might we apply this notion of gratitude as a value in action by which to perform to our potential to projects, one-on-one meetings with a manager, and team meetings? Which of those do you want to go first?
Well, let's get into the team meeting stuff, and then we can get into the personal, because we've been talking organizational so far. And then, in the last 10 minutes or so, I'd love to reflect on your personal gratitude protocols beyond the organization and how that supports it as well. So let's look at, like, what do we do in a team meeting to start bringing about that stronger culture that you're talking about, and particularly to bring about some sort of gratitude protocols. And actually, why don't you share why we say gratitude protocols instead of something else?
Well, a protocol is a shared agreement to follow a certain set of prescribed steps with the intent of achieving a desirable outcome. So, a gratitude protocol is a shared agreement to follow a set of prescribed steps by which to achieve a desirable outcome, which is performing to potential, getting the job done, getting it done in such a way that you have the experience of well-being. Okay. So
So, if I may, so these are just the things that we do consistently, regularly, habitually, in terms of how we interact with one another.
No, that's habitual bullshit that's operating on automatic pilot. I'm talking about deliberate and persistent in performing to potential. The same old, well-trodden cow paths of the mind is about what's going to get us yesterday. It's going to get us more of the same. So no, I want to be very strident and aggressive in attacking bullshit habits. Bullshit habits that are about reinforcing and confirming the past and about discounting the future. So no, not these well-run, not these unconscious reflexive habits.
Okay.
Cool. So if you were to go out and do a search on the top 100 most authoritative articles on meetings and you did a content analysis of those top 100 most authoritative pieces of journalism, as I have done the content analysis of it, 84, 85% of all of those writings reinforce one or two basic conclusions. Meetings suck. Meetings are necessary. We are incompetent, stupid, and lazy about managing meetings.
Yes.
So those are kind of the three top lines. Meetings suck. We have to do them, and we need to do better. And there are all these kind of ideas about how we can do better, but a lot of them are just good ideas that require executive willpower or executive function and willpower to do.
Well, and to your previous point about, the mindlessness of how we approach things oftentimes, I mean, that is the key distinction that you're bringing forth here, right? Is that we need to be more intentional, we need to be more mindful, and we need to be able to understand that there are some things we can agree to do together following a series of protocols that will turn that whole thing
Let
around.
me address that, Chris. And again, I don't mean to be contrarian here, but
No, please.
I submit that no one needs to do anything. So no, you don't need to be more intentional. No, you don't need to be more conscious and deliberate. However, if you're accountable for delivering results through a team, that's probably a good idea that you become conscious, deliberate, and persistent about how to achieve results. However, there's nothing in the book of life that says you must be. You can sleepwalk through life like billions and billions of people do every day.
Fair.
So we're talking about stepping out of the same old and saying, "Oh, I want to have an extraordinary life. I want to have a career that is deeply meaningful, where I know that I made an impact, where I achieve things that were beyond my ability to imagine because I was an effective collaborator." And the collaborations allowed things to come in, allowed things to emerge that were beyond my imagination. So, if you want to play that game, great. Then you want to make gratitude your ally. Okay, so I'm back to meetings. Meetings suck. Meetings are necessary, and we need to do better. So I'm going to start off with a basic team meeting criteria, and so here's basically the top line criteria for any meeting. At the end of the meeting, did I have more energy than when I came? Did I have more energy at the end of the meeting than I came in with?
That's been about 1 in 500 for me. So
yes, great. It was a good meeting. No, you got work to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to do a whole session on meetings. And part of that are some of the protocols out of the core protocols for high performing teams. Psychological safety, everyone acknowledging the contributions of everyone, making sure that there's kind of more or less equal sharing of the spotlight or the talking, etc. Plus the interpersonal awareness of the emotional states or moods of others. And so there are protocols that we do in team meetings, like to kick it off. Mid-check meetings of halfway, a third or halfway through the meeting, do an integrity check. Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being like this is achieving everything you wanted in this meeting to achieve. Where are you? Oh, I'm a 7. Great. well, what are 3 ways by which we can make this a 10? So it's closing the loop. So making everyone in the meeting co-own the outcome.
Well, that starts with, of course, first letting everyone understand what the outcome is, perhaps even before they get to the meeting.
As I said, we're going to dedicate a whole meeting. We're going to do a whole
Yeah,
series of
understood.
meetings. So every meeting should have an explicit, here's the outcome that we want to achieve, why this meeting is necessary, how long so there's an agenda. So we'll get into that. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
at the level that we're going to address today, there are 3 or 4 meaningful things that we can do to make meetings produce more energy for the people than when they started with. It starts with having it. Yes, it has an agenda. Yes, there are some protocols for doing a kickoff. Yes, there are some protocols for doing midway checks. But first and foremost, is this meeting? Why is this meeting necessary?
So I just want to ground in again for a moment. I know you've said it several times, but the concept of this idea of everyone leaving the meeting with more energy than what they came. That is just such a powerful key to unlock, because it changes how you think about the structure of the meeting. It changes your choices during the course of a conversation. And of course, if you're coming to it mindfully yourself, and as a waymaker, trying to make way for others, it is about finding those focal points like this. And that's just such a powerful one. If your intention is set on ensuring that everyone leaves that meeting with more energy than what they came, that just unlocks everything else that you want in performance.
Yeah. And having more energy than when you started is one of the fuel sources for gratitude.
And then I guess I just want to add one other thing here, because, going back to the Waymakers Live, that this is a show that we're doing. Hi again, by the way, if you're just joining, this is Chris Hewer and Michael Moon. And today we're talking about gratitude, unlocking your personal and professional success, particularly for an organization, not only personally and professionally. Anyways, it's such a powerful intention to set. And at the same time, what I want to just take a beat on with you, Michael, is about how might somebody introduce something as simple as this? That sort of concept. If they're not the cultural plan director or the VP of people or something else, you don't have to wait for your organizational leaders to do this, right? You can just go in and start bringing these energies and attitudes and intentions into the meetings that you're running now. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
That's correct. So a team leader, a team manager, a project manager can simply start introducing these enhanced or augmented meeting protocols. Um, uh, and it'll be important that it kind of get introduced as hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or I propose that we start leveling up our meetings. Here's here's a write up of what, why, how, who, when, in terms of, like a little meeting brief called here's what we want to do. Open it for comments, making sure that everyone can say, yeah, but how about, yeah, okay. And to that, we want to use another thing out of the core protocols called the perfection game, which is, I need your advice on how to make this a 10. So, given what we've talked about, what I've presented so far, how would you rate this in terms of being perfect, a 10? Well, I think it's about a 6. Well, Chris, I think it's about a 6. And I said, okay, well, the perfection game protocol basically now obligates you to provide 4 concrete, prescriptive recommendations for making this a 10. You're on.
Yeah, I love that.
So every time you make a recommendation and we use it, guess what? You become a co-owner. You become
Yeah, because it's actually stimulated you to think about what if you were in charge of this and had the power to change it. Therefore, we've actually given that power and given that permission and invited people in to finish it. I'm sorry, this is a really weird tangent, but it brings me back to actually the Picasso exhibit I saw a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I learned in listening to the audio tour is that part of Picasso's process in the abstractions and in some of the bizarre sort of violins and guitars and stuff that he did was the idea of leaving some pieces missing so that the actual viewer of the painting could fill in those gaps to imagine it as a guitar or a fruit plate or a woman or whatever it might be, to create that sense of co-authorship with them and to thereby bring them experientially into the painting itself. And anyways, when I heard that the first time, that just unlocked that, this whole other thinking that you've just been going through about co-ownership and how through imperfection we do that. And one last thought on that really quickly, when we were actually promoting wikis, when wikis first came out and trying to explain it, one of the things we found with enterprise adoption for wikis was that you had to seed it with bad information. Because if we could seed it with bad information, people who had the right information who would run after it and see it might be inspired to actually edit the page and correct it or put up the right information. So there's a lot of places where this really comes in very practically as well.
Right.
And actually, Michael, there's one other thing here, coming back to what you were talking about before, I want to point out, and I don't want to get too deep into it, although we've got about 20 minutes left, so maybe we start here shortly. But one simple way, and again, I want to keep giving you practical ways to start implementing this stuff, to put this sense of, do I feel better afterwards? Do I have more energy? Is literally to ask people to self-score that when they're coming in the meeting. How do you feel? How do you feel right now?
So again, Chris, part of the gamification of meetings is introducing that we're going to play the meeting game. 2, this meeting game is an open-ended, infinite game with the idea, the intent of how long can we keep the badminton volley in play. We're going to keep score on playing the meeting game by a very simple score. Did you have more? Did you produce? Did you co-produce? Did you co-create? Do you have more energy at the end of it than you started? Great. Now, if for some reason you're consistently showing up as not having more energy than when you started, then we can have a one-on-one conversation called, maybe this meeting isn't for you. Maybe you shouldn't be here. That's absolutely valid. Or what are you not contributing that is now repressing or attenuating your expression of aliveness and being present and contributing? How could we make this meeting work for you? But also work for the team. So there's all sorts so there's a mindset that comes out of. The mindset is not one of compliance or coercion or management. The mindset is, what would it take for us to perform to potential? The team, what would it take for you to perform to your potential? Now, again, one of the just informally, I have found that the people who consistently come to meetings and leave with less energy shouldn't be there in the first place.
Well, a lot. So, now we can talk about paycheck collectors versus, engaged employees.
Well, okay, so now you're getting into one of the costs that you pay to perform to potential. Is that there's a systematic purge of spectators and paycheck getters. I'll say that again. If you have the intent, the conscious, deliberate intent of performing to potential as a leader, one of the things that you have, one of the costs that you pay, one of the things you pay the piper on that is the systematic purging of people who don't want to play that game. the paycheck, the spectators, the naysayers, the low energy, fuck you, I'm just here to get my paycheck.
Yeah.
Now look, there are some businesses that have to tolerate a certain number of workers who just want to get a paycheck. Fine.
I had been for a while trying to figure out how we might be able to brand those people as sort of, I hate to say the enemy, but in that sort of way, so that we can.
They are just lost children who have yet to own their circumstance. They're lost children who want mom or dad to come take care of them, as opposed to standing on their own 2 feet and moving forward with conscious, deliberate intent. Now, look, I remember vividly when I was just a snotty ass child who wanted the world to take care of me. And I had a very unusual, very intense conversation with the world, where I'm getting constantly slapped against the head and kicked in the ass. Until I fucking woke up and go, oh, I don't like this. I guess every consequence has a choice. I wonder what my choice is. Wake the fuck up.
Yeah.
Now, there are people that are sensitive. There are people that are still, on the learning curve, and we need to have some compassion for them. And part of having compassion for them is not putting them into areas of responsibility where they fuck it up for the rest of us.
Or if they do, that they're not, repeating those same mistakes again, but really taking the lesson.
No, Chris, they cannot but repeat those mistakes. They simply want mom or dad to wipe their nose and put food on the table.
Yeah.
There's a time to be a child. There really is. Anyway.
All right.
So I want to tie it off on meetings. I'm saying that one of the things I want to bring forward here is scorecards. And so think of a performance scorecard as the back end of a checklist. So I got a checklist. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Right? Now, you can have a checklist for a protocol. Then there's the activity, and then the outcome of that activity, and then a scorecard. And a scorecard says, on a scale of 1 to 10, did this meeting achieve its objectives, stated objectives? Yes. If not, on a scale of 1 to 10, what does? Well, we got about 8%. 8 out of 10. Great. Was the meeting well managed? Yes. No. Yes. On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of being managed to perfection, performing to potential, what was our score? Oh, I give it about an 8. Well, great. So do you have any suggestions on what we could do to make this better? So this notion of continuous improvement needs to be built into on the back end of every meeting. Now, again, eventually we'll have apps for this, and we'll have sentiment analysis based on the Otter script that will be able to deduce this. But the point being, meetings are a mechanism of culture. Meetings are the primary medium of management action. Now, again, in this untethered world of ours, we have to work extra. We have to work extra hard to making these meetings meaningful. So, scorecarding is another, and scorecarding is something I want to come back to again and again. Having scorecards that measure performance to potential is a critical mechanism of corporate culture by which we can put into place a small catalyst every meeting, every interaction, every project, continuous improvement. There's no improvement unless there's feedback.
Yeah, and I want to point out, by going through these, we've been working with Michael for some time now, over a couple of years on some different projects, known each other 15 years, but over the past 6 months, in applying these protocols to our work together, definitely has improved our decision making, the feeling that I have when we're doing the work. And also, it really, really stretches my mind in both positive and negative ways when I'm looking at why was it a 6 or a 10. It's not just about like finding the things to complain about. It's an opportunity to suggest new things. And one of the most powerful parts of it is just even providing that space to listen to the participants, to listen to your team members and collaborators, because that in and of itself is a form of respect. And it's, again, another key component in driving that co-ownership.
Chris, I want to move to the next piece because I want to make sure we get this in.
Sure enough. Let me get one last point in then on meetings, and then let's move into the next section. And what I wanted to add to this is that, look, it's important. Obviously, everyone out there has some possibly bad experiences with meetings, or I think everyone has been in a bad meeting. But the idea that we can make it better, few people have kind of embraced that at all. But what I want to put forward now is that in the time of remote work, where we have this blended life work sort of experience, where we're, taking care of the dogs or the kids at one moment and then getting on a Zoom meeting and everything else, being more intentional about meetings, setting up the outcomes and expectations in advance, running them more efficiently so that they end on time, all of that stuff is more important than ever. And it creates an opportunity now for another way to introduce a shift in the cultural approach to meetings to meet the moment of distributed teams and remote work. And so if, you can't just do it on your own because you want to influence a positive gratitude-based cultural performance and start bringing about the improvement of the organization to its highest potential, and that's not strong enough, then the remote switch is probably the opportunity for that introduction.
Cool.
So let's go ahead here. Again, so we're wrapping into the final segment here. This is Chris Ewer and Michael Moon for Waymakers Live. And we've already gone into how gratitude is the key for unlocking high performance in organizations, how we can build it into a into a cultural plan, and also talking about how we can actually influence and radically transform meetings into a better experience through not only the gratitude protocol, which we need to explain to you more about given in a future episode, but through other ways of approaching the meeting. Now, there's another form of a meeting, Michael, that I think is what we need to get into next, which is your manager meeting, right? Is how do we actually develop our people as a team leader or manager?
So Chris, I want to characterize this one-on-one meeting in the following hierarchy. So the overall vision for it is perform to potential. This then comes down to performance management. How do we manage performance? And most organizations are rather, how would I say, they look at performance management through the lens of control, control communications and command control communications. Do this, do that.
It's more risk management than empowerment, unfortunately.
Well, it's what got us here, and there's not, it's what got us here. But now we need to do better. So we're going to now add to performance management gratitude. Okay. This then comes down to what I'm now calling a performative context. In a performative context of work, and it's all the stuff that affects my performance and well-being. Great. Some of that is place, some of that is process, some of that's people, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in performative context of work. One thing I want to bring down here is now my one-on-one meetings with managers, with a manager. Which I'm saying, I want to look at one-on-one meetings with a manager not as an abstract, not as like a Euclidean abstraction, like a circle or a square or an infinite plane. I want to think about it. I want to really talk about meetings in the context of, in this organization, what is a one-on-one meeting in terms of the performative context of work, and specifically, how can we bring gratitude to that? So first, in my first 10 years in my professional life, I found that I was unemployable.
Only the first 10?
I had 8 jobs over the course of that 10 years, and I was fired from 7 of them.
Oof.
And I was fired for a whole bunch of quote unquote different reasons, but fundamentally, I had a deep, abiding, aggressive reaction to stupidity and stupid meetings and stupid managers. And generally, being the smartest guy in the room, it meant that I knew that you were stupid way faster than you could recognize that you were stupid. Or saying stupid things. Now, again, I'm putting that a little bit in tongue in cheek, but the point was, I hated one-on-one meetings, and I talked to a lot of people, and they hate one-on-one meetings. And why? Well, for the most part, it is coercive, it is browbeating, and it's where the manager does 80% of the work, 80% of the talking. So in a one-on-one meeting that's been transformed by gratitude, first of all, it's my meeting with the manager. That's one. It's my meeting. It's my fucking meeting, not yours. And that's really, really critical that we really bring forward the ownership of the meeting. 2.
Yeah. Well, switching that focal point changes a great deal on its own.
Right. 2, that means you, Chris, the manager, are going to speak about 15 or 20% of the time. I'm going to speak 80% of the time. Why? Because it's my fucking meeting. Your job is a waymaker. Your job is to make me more productive. Now, this goes to a core principle of management. A manager is multiplicative of performance of employees. If a manager is not getting multiplicative results from his team, he's a bad manager and needs to either be trained or taken out of a management position. That means it's the job of a manager to unlock the creativity, the passion, the meaning, the curiosity, the creativity of the employee. So just as you're going to get out of a meeting with more energy, a one-on-one meeting should invigorate, should energize, should inspire that employee to perform to his or her potential. If it's not, it was a poorly designed meeting, and more often than not, you have a stupid manager that allowed that to occur.
Well, and then there's the whole anticipation going into these one-on meetings too. I mean, there's so much wrong with them.
Well, so let's now get into the practical aspects of that. So I submit that the manager is permitted to ask 6 or so questions, and I'll elucidate these quickly. We might have a little, and guys, if you have some questions about that, now would be the time to jump in. And we'll do a whole session on Fireside just on transforming these performance uplift meetings. So right there, I'm reframing it. These are performance uplift meetings with my manager. Okay, so the manager asks, Chris, what's the best thing that happened around here? So you'd say, blah, 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 blah. Chris, what else good happened around here? So what am I doing from a neuroscience perspective? I'm priming that good things happen. 2, that good things happening are the norm, not the exception. It's really important that part of our culture plan, part of performance management, part of the performative context of work is that we norm that good things happen.
Yeah, the expectation is positive. That's the default position.
That's the default. Good things happen. All is well. Good things happen. So the third question that a manager asks is, what needs to be improved around here? And out of the conversation, usually because the real first insight about what needs to be improved is the frontline worker. because they're experiencing the pain of a missing system or a broken system or a need for a new protocol. Great. So what needs to be improved around here? You say, what is this? Great. So would you take our project? Would you use our project inception protocol to research and come up with a recommendation as far as how we might make that better? So now I went from complaint, from wipe my nose, the soup is cold complaint, a child parent complaint, to we're co-owners in this. So come up with a plan. Just use my protocol set of 4 or 5 questions as far as what you can do, what we might do, propose to make that better. Great. With respect to your personal plan, how do you need help? What assistance can I provide? Again, goes back to the core assumption that the job of the manager is to unlock the creativity, passion, and productivity and well-being of the worker. Now, part of that is that part of the position, part of that performative context, is that there is an agreement by and between each worker vis-a-vis a position agreement that basically says here's the overall jobs that need to be done, and here are the objectives and key results of the organization that now have been translated into objectives and key results for this particular position that currently you own. So part of the one-on-one meeting is an employee's report of the current status of their objectives and key results, and in what areas do they need assistance. And inevitably, one of the areas that they need assistance is how to get cooperation out of somebody else. That then becomes the job of the manager to waymake in the organization, to spend political capital, to essentially work the problem at a different level. So, again, the purpose of one-on-one meetings on a weekly basis, a performance uplift meeting, is to uplift the performance of the individual. That's the job of management. There is no other job greater than that for a manager than to uplift the performance of those who he manages. And if you're not okay with that, if that's not something you want to do, fine, get the fuck out of here. You're not a manager.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully everyone realizes that one of the old adages of.
Sorry, Chris, you dropped off there.
But again, that gets into servant leadership and
Chris, you're dropping out.
being of service to others, unfortunately. And we have a.
Chris, you're dropping out.
Well, it's a good thing our time's almost up here.
Cool.
I'm in rural Oregon today, and the bandwidth isn't that good. But Michael, here it is the end of the show. But before we go on that, the one thing I'd just love for you to wrap up on is if you could just share your personal gratitude protocols that you do in the morning and evening to give people a sense of how you set yourself up for success in coming into bringing this into your teams and organizations.
Well, we should probably dedicate an entire fireside chat to that. So
fair enough, but for people who have stayed, I'd love them to get that payoff.
Highlights. I'll give you the trailer highlights. One,
please.
I've made gratitude the number one thing for me to bring into each successive moment of now. So I look at my day as a set of successive moments of now. That is my job in which to be conscious, deliberate, and persistent in managing. Now, I understand that's going to sound like, mystical mumbo jumbo, and that's my day. My day is I approach every day as a series of successive moments of now in which I have the opportunity, if not the moral obligation, to manage such that I produce, allow to emerge what needs to emerge. Part of that is when I get up in the morning, there are certain things I do when I'm laying in bed. There are certain things I say to myself in the shower as I'm getting ready to put my clothes on. Like, may it be that with each breath that I take today, that I become more conscious, deliberate, and persistent in handling intent. I do my little morning exercise, 15 minutes of, 40 push-ups and all these kind of things. And then I come up and I make my tea. I do some meditation. I do a 30 minutes of meditation in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon. In the morning, I do a little morning journal. It's really more of a flight plan. And there's just some things I do before I read, and fundamentally, and then at the end of the day, there's stuff I do during the middle of the day. At the end of the day, I have a journal of gratitude. And part of my journal of gratitude is more of a scorecard called Things I Did Today with Impeccability. And I'll write down 15 things that I did with impeccability. 5 or so things that I did with abiding love. 2 or 3 things that I did with full integrity. 4 or 5 things I did with creative persistence. Plus, and here are 5 people with whom I had interactions today for which I'm grateful. I will say, I'll probably write tonight something along the lines of, I am grateful for the gifts. I am grateful for Chris's gifts of authenticity, community, and playfulness. I'm grateful for Stephanie's gifts of inspiration, of co-betterment, and we can do this. With respect, I am grateful for Matt's gifts of safety, of judgment, and possibility. I'm grateful for Stephen's gifts of co-betterment, love, compassion. I'm grateful for Heather's gifts of support, of faith, and beauty. So every night I will write down for at least 5 people 3 gifts of their presence that they gave me. And night after night, week after week, month after month, I'm training my feral dog mind, cognitive unconscious, to pay attention to spot, to notice, to call out gifts of energy with gratitude.
I can't emphasize how incredibly powerful those exercises are enough. It's a hard thing. We get into needing to make habits out of it, and needing the 6 weeks, as some people will say, 30 days for others. But
Chris,
ground.
It is a function of your temporal discounting that you don't do this like you eat every day or take a shower.
Yep.
For some reason, not managing your mood, not managing your moment of now for gratitude should be, could be, might be something as core and as essential as breathing, as getting good rest, and as feeding yourself.
Well, I believe that if you really have a commitment to transforming yourself and your organization, that these are fundamental steps, and that gratitude as a central theme and focal point is truly the key to unlock that personal and professional success. But we're out of time, Michael. We're a little bit over here, but I did want to go over because I wanted to give that grounding. If you're going to change an organization, there are things we have to do to the activities of the organization that changes the experience of it.
So, Chris, before you go down that rabbit hole, I just want to say, for those people that are listening to this, either live or recorded, it's important to know this, that as you set out to transform something, you yourself must be transformed by the act of transforming something. They're deeply intertwined or entangled. So the notion of transforming an organization means that you must first transform how you manage the moment now. Otherwise, it's just more buzzwords and more happy talk and more positive fucking attitude than anything that's concrete or meaningful or sustainable. And the work is, how do I reduce temporal discounting as far as my potential and my ability to perform to it? Everything else is just bullshit.
Well, I would contend that until an individual has social proof of some kind or enough pain to drive them away from prior habits.
And we are now in a time of great pain. And that's whether you want to call it the Great Resignation, the age of chaos. This is a time of increasing pain with more expected and on the way. So now is the time to go, okay, I've had about enough of this. I deserve better. I'm going to do better. Wait a minute. I am doing better. That's my commitment moving forward. I can't not but. I must.
It's awesome. Well, I'm convinced, and I see that period now, and again, for so many reasons, I'm so forever grateful. Not only at this time of year, but every day, for the chance that we have to help more people to unlock their full potential, to unlock their organization's full potential, and literally every individual here is part of an ongoing chain and journey to transform the world into a better place for all of us. And it's these simple sorts of actions that we can share, that you can take any one of. You don't need to do all of it. You don't need to do all the journaling and all the end of the day journaling. Just start doing one piece of it and implement it that way, so that you can do one small change to create a really large difference in your life. And I think that's actually probably one of the underlying secrets of Waymakers, to identify what that one little thing is we can change that'll start that cascade of effects to bring the whole of the organization, the whole of our organizational culture, indeed the whole of the community in which that organization exists, and beyond that, the whole of the world into a better state.
Let's conclude on that coda. That one thing is nothing more, nothing less than, I'm just gonna.
Nice. I'm just gonna. And not only that, but all is well. And I'm grateful for being here. And I'm grateful for the chance that we have in this moment and every day to make a difference for others and for ourselves. So with that, I'd just like to wrap up. This has been Waymakers Live with Chris Hewer and Michael Moon, talking about gratitude protocols today and every day. And looking forward to seeing you here next week. And thank you again, Michael, for sharing so much and being so vulnerable and sharing some of these other, more personal aspects.